All right, welcome back to the broadcast. Still with us, Wakili Ngugi, Waruguru Kiai, Josephat Kamanya, Kevin Osido, Nordin Kagai, and we get to get a hold later on of Tabitha Ogutu. And let's now get to what it is that have been detailed or has been detailed in the papers. And we have this aspect of schools. We might not be able to ponder on every subject like every other person to get a chance on the same, but we'll go with the ones that go first. And Waruguru, we come to you. Fees reprieve for parents as schools reopen. I don't know whether you've started paying school fees, but yes, here we are. And the crash programs that we have witnessed, I am telling you, it's not easy for some of us who are parents.
No, I have started paying school fees. I don't know whether it's good news or bad news because, the calendar is very crazy.
Yeah.
But I'd have to say this. I think the best practical solutions is for the ministry to caution parents against hidden fees. We have students in primary school and even high school paying these charges and nobody can really understand.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're still buying for buses, buses, I don't know, tuition fees.
Yes.
All sorts of crazy fees that are hidden, that are not even within the ministry's guidelines of what should be paid. And that is actually what is really stressing and bogging parents down. Keeping in mind that most of the parents now in our economy, which is highly fed by the informal sector, we really need to ensure that we map out who those parents are, because not all parents are in the same standing. Most of them operate in the informal sector, which was highly affected by the negative implications of COVID. Number two, we really have to ensure that if we are serious on cushioning parents against high and punitive school fees, the secret is in what the head teachers are charging as hidden fees, which makes it very hard one to be traced, and two, the fees, those things are so mandatory in the sense that kids are sent home and nobody really knows what that money is used for.
That's true.
In the school sector.
I'll take my example, and I don't want to paint my child's school in a bad way, but I'll just look at the basic. As he gets to grade 1, I buy around 16 textbooks. Not around, actually 16 textbooks. You've not even, you forget about the golden bells and the others and that are mandatory, and he would go with them all the way up. So 16 of them, and then he's supposed to add around 4 more this time around. Grade 1, and remember it's a crash program. The other time when he was in, I say PP something, there are books he came back home that they had not touched, all this time that were asked for. And so I am asking myself, at what point will they be able to go through all the 16 books, that they will not proceed with them to grade 2? And all these questions. And I'm asking myself, all right, you want to respond to that. And probably that equates to technically what it is that she speaks about. I'm supposed to get like 2 packs of pencils. That I hold around 12.
Besides the 12 pencils, or rather 3 packets, I think there's a manila paper, there's a printing ream, etc. That doesn't really make sense to a common mwananchi down there who is having this child for just a week to only take care of actually these extra bills that are coming every time the child closes school. And so I don't know whether it's high time the minister and the ministry looks at this new curriculum and new calendar for the primary school, to make sure that parents are not going through this kind of pressure. There's too much pressure to make sure that the children are back in school, and they're not just back home because of not affording to go back with whatever requirements they have to take back to school.
Kevin, do you suppose that we can trust the Ministry of Education on this? It acknowledges that a majority of people have lost lives or livelihoods because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and so the struggles are on. And so the CS says, what, head teachers, please do not send students back home. I am certain that you've heard of these words before.
Not just heard, but actually experienced it, because I have my own children that are in school, and children of my relatives, and children that we also support as a family to go to school, and the stories of so many other children all over this country. And besides that, you look at the kind of environments that our learners have to go through. And so the long and short of it, in my view, is that the Ministry of Education needs to be very categorical around some of these pronouncements, and particularly the directives that it is giving to school administrators and even to parents. Because even as Mheshimiwa Magoha is talking about not sending away children from school, when they opened early in the year, he said the same thing. And children were actually sent back home. And some of them, Linda, actually, had to go through serious mental counseling and stories around children who even attempted to commit suicide, because they know the kind of families they come from, they know the kind of homes that they live in, and the expectations that they have to be able to also, be just normal as they live with their peers and colleagues. And so you imagine that you are not in school, and your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, others are in school. So the Minister of Education needs to really do a lot. One, including proper budgeting for education facilities, education equipment, and particularly stationery. I remember that some time ago, Mheshimiwa Magoha also said that the kind of CBC that we have is a CBC that expects teachers to be innovative and adaptive. I don't think how that is expected to do in a system, in a situation where you set a similar exam for schools that have lights and schools that also do not have lights.
Right.
We are making we are taking experiments with the lives of our children, and I believe it is not right. If CBC is not working, remember there are also cases in court around this particular education system that we are running. We have to do the second thing, which is have a dialogue with education stakeholders. We want to see the ministry being deliberate and being very concerned about what learners are going through and also what the schools are going through. So we need a proper plan on how we want to have dialogue around what CBC is, how we expect to dispense with CBC. And remember, Linda, that the same minister has also asked teachers to go back to school on their own monies. You know, they have no plans to pay for capacity building for teachers within CBC. So there is a lot of confusion that as a common citizen in this country, I'd expected that Mheshimiwa Professor Dr. Magoha would actually deal with. Because if he's unable to deal with it, we will do what we will see, what we continue to see, where one cabinet secretary comes with their own ways of running schools and education system for the next 5 years. When another one comes, I wouldn't be surprised if this CBC ends with Professor Magoha.
Well, I don't know whether I should say God forbid or not. I'm sure you want to say something. But before I come to you, let me engage Nordin on this one, a different matter, but still in relation to the same, because he was here while there was that story of Mukuru kwa Ruben playing and the slums, and there was a very young girl, pretty much young girl, calling upon Deputy President William Ruto to do what he can do best, because she says, if you don't do something in terms of cushioning us at this point where our houses have been demolished, is this story that is here. All days work, police officers ride on tractor as they leave demolition sites at Mukuru kwa Ruben. Probably they received, the necessary communication before this was conducted. But being conducted at the time when they're supposed to go back to school, that is today, they do not know where to go to. And this young girl, who probably is not even a voter, says, Deputy President William Ruto, if you don't cushion us, if you do not help us at this point in time, then we're not going to vote for you.
Well, you see, they say that, or she says that courtesy because he portrays himself as the voice of the voiceless. And so those people who feel like no one can articulate their issues for them, they look up to you. Now, I don't understand the urgency of that road all of a sudden, because the demolition happening today, as we were seeing, kids have to go back to school. So you take them to square one, all right? Parents, for example, didn't have fees to take them to school. Now they have to look for a place they call a home. Those are expenses. And then this, as they ride away in this tractor, I think that's their moment of glory, which is so sad, you see, because at the end of the day, these demolitions that happen, it's very sad that in a country that we are soon to celebrate our independence, come December, right? It is so sad that years after independence, we still have issues about landlessness. And we have a report that talks about the land issue in Kenya. Nobody wants to implement that. We need to focus on how we can be able to help every Kenyan who is willing and able to acquire land so they can be able to have a shelter. And to touch on the education, it's sad. There's something he said about the ministry having a dialogue. I'll take it from there. You see, the sad reality is that when you're in office and you believe you know it all, you're a one-man show, And for you, bravado is the only way going forward. That is why Magoha experiences what he experiences, the challenges he gets. Because he believes, I am the only one with the information that is required. I know everything. That is a sad reality.
Yeah.
I believed we, as a country, we lost the plot somewhere. You see, when we were talking about qualifications for education for leaders, we should have opened up the conversation and talked about the education system in Kenya. How affordable is it? How accessible is it? Because if we do that, then we will be able to answer the questions on education. Because when now, for example, you have, like he said, there are those who are continuing with school properly, and they'll do the same examination with those who are somewhere in a school where there are no, first and foremost, there are no classrooms. They are under a tree. Those who have classrooms, some of them don't even have a roof. Some of them don't even have electricity. And then the same system will judge both students at the same time. It doesn't make sense. So some are being prepared to fail, and some are being prepared to succeed. So we need to have an honest conversation on the education system in Kenya so that we can be able to offer affordable and adequate education to every single child that is in Kenya, because education is a right. It's not a favor, you realize. So that is something that they forget. Because when you come up, for example, with CBC, have you looked at the long term? I'm sure he's looking at right now because he believes that he knows everything. So as a leader or someone in office, you should be able to engage stakeholders and Kenyans at large. So you can be able, because whatever you are bringing forward will affect me and my child. And yours in future to come, because you will have great grandchildren. So I believe those in office need to be open to dialogue so we can be able to move forward and change the education system in Kenya.
And we'll definitely look at that as we continue later on. We'll be discussing the aspect of schooling and, what it culminates to. And the conversation is that do we get too much schooling yet little education or little, benefit from the same? And so, Kamanya, as you round up on the two subjects, the education aspect and students, going back to school today, and this one on demolitions and what it speaks for them that are vulnerable at this point, are expected to go to school, but sadly, well, they will not because of these occurrences.
Yeah, I think, good morning, and I think it's very sad that we're beginning to witness the demolition of a learning facility.
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter whether it is on a riparian land or it's somebody's property. There just has to be a system that facilitates transfer of these facilities, because these are communal centers that are benefiting our kids, especially people who are in these marginalized and disadvantaged areas. So actually it's very sad to see that the police were immobilized to go and just go and disrupt the learning process when you're expecting kids to go back to school.
Yeah.
So that's very sad, and I hope it just stops and doesn't happen anymore, because we're in a situation whereby we need to have every child going back to school in their own respective areas. Now, when it comes to school fees, I have continued to talk about this, the premise of free education. I find it being a fallacy, and it is broken. We need to revisit that, because free education in Kenya is not existent. As parents, we are having to pay hefty school fees. And fine, as much as we want to invite the revision of our curriculum, CBC, we welcome it, but it needs to be well modernized and harmonized, because it is happening at the expense of a parent and the child. We continue to pay fees to buy books and other materials that really are not being used. And then also, and as my colleague says, there are a lot of hidden charges you find. Developmental projects, and you're buying buses, you're doing improvement of the facilities. Where does the government chip in? I find that there is a huge disconnect between the policy formulation team, where we have the CES Makoha, and as Kevin says, it would be very sad to see BC go home with Makoha, because we need to revise our curriculum. Yeah. And the disconnect remains between them, the policymakers, and us, the implementers, who are the teachers, the parents, and the pupils and the students. There should have been enough consultation before rolling out this new curriculum, so that all the parents, we would have been well prepared. You
think there wasn't enough, or to be honest?
It wasn't enough.
And I mean, knowing us, do you suppose
if it were there, you and I as parents would not be complaining, because we'll be knowing what to expect.
All right.
You see, so we feel entrapped and set up, and then they brought it in a manner that we have to comply. No one wants to compromise on the quality of education of our children and the children of this nation. But can it be well structured? And if you're offering free education, then let it be well described. so that everybody knows what is their role and how do we facilitate that. Of course, we know it's not free because somehow it has to be financed. But where do we get these resources from? Now, telling parents that the children are not going to be sent home, it's a finding for now, but we know those are pending bills for us as parents.
Eventually we'll have to pay. Right.
So how much relief are we expecting from, do we experience from that statement of the CS? So it's very worrying. I would just hope that we can have a revision of the school fees, given that the terms have gotten shorter, and also we can have a more prorated payment, because why do I have to pay almost 70% of the school fees in the first term? And yet it's my kid, it's the same school, I'll be here for a whole year.
Well, all right, so let's close on that debate. As I have said, we'll be discussing that later on. There are a couple of key things that we do not go without mentioning them, in as much as we're here to discuss about the youths and their involvement in politics. State's team to push power reforms, as a story captured on page 32. And even as we speak about states to push on power reforms, we have seen Deputy President William Ruto and his allies castigating this move, because then it, according to them, it's an argument that speaks of, an event of state capture, and I mean an event of just getting to understand what then means, or what it means for these entities that are owned by government that are dwindling by the day, and still we want to have a different arm of government or a different angle of government coming in to try and address the same. When we speak about what we have seen or witnessed over the past years in regards to the performance of Kenya Power, well, there's so much that comes on board, and also in regards to the parastatals that we have seen what the government has done to the likes of the KMC, Kenya Meat Commission. We have seen what has happened in Nairobi. Does it then mean that this is the direction that we need to go for us to see our state entities performing as expected, Waruguru?
I think the question from my take is government is arguing that as far as our electricity is concerned, the main issue is the independent power producers. But no, for the Mwananchi, that is not what they're feeling. I want to be able to have access to electricity at an affordable rate. The back-end conversations on who is not supplying or who is being charged, like the back-end charges, really don't matter. I'm so sorry. Can I begin again?
It's all right. Proceed. Sorry.
I am one of those. I'm one of those few Kenyans who stammer.
Get furious. All right.
No, naturally I stammer, so I cannot be on live TV. This is a struggle for every person who stammers, but I have a point to make.
All right.
And so here I go again.
All right. Proceed.
See, the common Mwananchi wants electricity at an affordable rate. Government is arguing that the reason as to why electricity is expensive is because of the independent power producers. So those conversations of who is not supplying to the national grid at what cost is not one for the common Mwananchi. Electricity still remains one of the most expensive products in this country, mostly for domestic users. And even as we're having discussions around free education, electricity is one of the things that will make it much more easy for us to operate. Children in this country in some schools still operate without electricity. So the back-end conversations, the policy discussions should be who, in terms of regulating the independent power producers. But for the common Mwananchi, we want electricity, we want well-lit roads, we want our children to have access to electricity, and we want small, medium enterprises to continue having electricity for them to produce their products and services at an affordable rate. Because when you have high bills in terms of electricity, it makes the cost of production for even the simplest of goods very expensive. And that is one of the things that makes even involvement of young people in industry very expensive. Because you have the licenses, which are again very prohibitive in this country, then access to electricity and the cost of maintaining that electricity. Perhaps even for the common Mwananchi, it is time for us to have a discussion around plan B ways of having electricity, like having solar panels and other forms of energy. Because currently, as it stands, our industries, our access to education, and even basic security in our streets is held hostage because of this back-end conversation of policy and who is applying to the grid or not.
Let's throw it back to you, Josephat, and look at that angle us getting other alternative sources of electricity. To be honest, in a world that is moving very fast, we understand how important it would be for us to have electricity, as Waruguru would say. And we also understand how effective it is in comparison to the other forms of, of energy, of power generation, projects that we would have. Do we really want to go that direction where now we're going to embrace solar systems? Do we really want to go back to the generation where we're going to focus much on generators and, all these forms of power generating methods?
Well, the saddest part of our energy system is that currently we are paying about 27 bob per unit, per token. And this has become what we are referring to as in a hustler nation, state capture. Because you look at the people...
Actually, that's the reason why I threw the question to you, because you come from that camp.
And we and we want to pronounce ourselves very clearly to the public that, we hear the cry of the people. Today, we should not be talking about, one, priding ourselves in connecting the last mile of electricity, and yet the people cannot afford to pay to light their own houses. So children are not able to do homework. So what sense does it make? Number two, the people who are feeding the power grid. Remember, the KPLC now has different functions. The people who will do installation, the people who will do the polling, and then the people who will do the supply. And if you look at the rates and the charges that are, if right now you just buy a token and you see the breakdown of what you've been charged, you will wonder, what have I bought? Because almost 80% has nothing to do with the token that you get. It's facilitation of getting that 1 unit of energy that you're going to consume within a very short time. Now, then here we have, this is a parastatal, remember. It's not a private entity, it's not a corporate whereby it should be a purely profit-making organization. There needs to be a revision again, because energy is the driving force behind our economy. You mentioned generators. We cannot go that line, because remember how much we are paying on diesel and petrol today. We need to modernize our energy systems and tap into alternative sources of energy. We have wind, we have solar, we have hydro, and then of course we have our geothermal power. What we are lacking is proper leadership, and this lies squarely on the government. They have no excuse. The prices of KPLC needs to come down as soon as yesterday.
I have been to institutions where, every activity is being run by solar, but also I've been to, say, hotels where, the activities are being run by solar panels. And, these are hotels where you're told you can't shower any time of the day. Imagine you've just taken a trip to Mombasa and you decide that, you will shower any time of the day. But you're being told, hot shower at 6:30 very early in the morning and 6:30 in the evening, simply because, well, they are powering the same with solar. And then you ask yourself, what is the essence of the same? As opposed to hotels where, activities are being run by electricity. So you can take a shower any time of the day and you're comfortable with that. Let me just give you a breakdown of what you pay for power. And say, for instance, you buy a token worth 1,000 bob. KPLC, meter number, blah, 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 token number, blah, 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 or token that you've received. Date, this units 63, and of course amount is about 1,000 bob. Token amount 630, VAT 118, fuel energy charge 161, forex charge 34 point something, EPRA charge 1 point something, warmer charge 1.4 something, REP charge this and this, inflation adjustment. So it is not about how much tokens you get, because 1,000 bob nowadays gives you even lesser than that. But the question is on all these charges that we have, and you requested to come in, Kevin.
Linda, it's quite unfortunate because government is doing business with the people. And it's even much more absurd because we don't break those charges to the common citizen to understand what they are for and what they really mean. And so because of the frustration and the desire to want to have light in my room, I will just pay. Whether it's for 200 shillings or whether it's for 20,000, if I have that 20,000 to use on tokens like some people do, whether it's 100 shillings, I will buy because I need to light my house. But that is purely based on the kind of frustration that people go through. That as a mother or as a father or as a guardian, your child, you don't want to get to a discussion with your child on why there is no power in the house, So you struggle to ensure that there is that power. But beyond that, Kenyans are helpless because we do not know who do we ask this kind of questions. I believe that in countries such as South Africa, the story that you are sharing is actually what it is. That when you check into a hotel, for instance, you are told that you can only get hot shower at this time because we are using solar, and that is what it is. Our country needs to get back to that level. And remember that right now, one of the big 4 agenda items, not of the president, like is manufacturing and food security and housing and all those others, for the reason as to why we are seated at the United Nations Security Council and chairing this month of October as a presidency, is because of the fact that we told the world that Kenya has the best innovations on climate change. And so that climate change is one of those big 4 agenda items, other than peace and security and preventing and countering violent extremism, that Kenya is really sharing with the world. We must be willing and ready to break it down to the common citizen. What is this thing we are calling climate change? And how do our actions as citizens, reflect on how much power either goes to waste or we contain? It is in Kenya where we prided ourselves with the fact that we actually discovered oil from some place in Turkana.
Yep.
And that this oil, we got a partnership with some company called Talo Oil that was supposed to help us mine. What happened to the thousands of cubic liters of oil that Kenya discovered from Turkana? The deputy president is being insincere. And I don't like saying this about the DP, but he needs to reconsider that when he talks about government, he is the second highest ranking government officer in this republic, unless he wants to be the leader of opposition. Then he needs to have a handshake with Mheshimiwa Raila so that they change seats. Because he is saying government is not helping Kenyans, but he is in government.
Yeah.
The CS for energy and petroleum is his CS, Mheshimiwa Charles Keter, unless there was a reshuffle when I was asleep. And he is able to take a phone call and call this gentleman and tell him, can you come to my office, either at Harambe Annex or at Karen? Can we have a conversation around all these things he's talking about, corruption and the changes that he is proposing within that particular ministry? Because the DP needs to stop carrying Kenyans as fools, because he has people seated somewhere in a tent and they are good for politicians. As Kiai says, policies are not made through political rallies. There are discussions that happen. And so Kenyans are saying that, Mheshimiwa DP, we are hurting because the fuel levies and charges are so high. Please help us to reduce them by having conversations with all these people he's saying, whether it is government that wants to take part of the government to give it to an agency. He is part of that government. What Kenyans are interested in is, can we have reduced costs? Can we have value for money? Because 1,000 shillings for 63 or 62 units is not feasible. I think, I mean, it's not even prudent. It is a waste of, Linda, it is, the government is taking advantage of the people of Kenya. And so Kenyans, we have to organize ourselves.
Right.
That organizing will be very difficult. It will be very, it will take some sacrifices. But if that is what it will mean for us to have proper cabinet secretaries and directors of energy and petroleum in this country, so be it. People are registering for voters right now. You know, people are registering as voters right now.
Right.
What does that vote mean to power and energy and the units that Kenyans are paying today?
There was a cabinet reshuffle. Polite reminder.
Okay,
Charles Keter is under devolution. If my memory serves me right, help me confirm that.
So
but at least that much I know. Monica Juma should be on energy today. And so
is that why the DP is being really angry and hard?
That's the question. Could that be?
Because these mistakes, Monica Juma is CS for energy not more than 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
The gentleman who has been seated there, who saw all these messes taking place, is Charles Keter, who is the deputy president's darling.
All right.
Let them have a conversation.
Just before you come in, let's allow Tabitha, lest she says that we have forgotten her. Tabitha, in 2020, somewhere around November, 1,000 could give you 63 units of, or token, yeah? Today, 1,000 bob gives you 39. That's, that's just absurd. Tabitha, what do you make of that as we maybe close on this debate?
Thank you, Linda. I'm joining you live from Siaya. I think the energy cost, the increase in energy costs is something that is very worrying, especially to even the mashinani business people or just general households. The fact that the government was running a program, I remember, Power Mashinani, and then it's coming to be something that the citizen cannot even afford anymore. And even sometimes the complaints around how you can buy electricity units, and then you cannot even get it. Like if you pay 100 shillings, for example, 200 shillings, and then at the end of the day, it takes time for you to even get the unit. Sometimes you don't even get the response at all from Kenya Power. So it just goes back to the cartels themselves, the ones who are, in charge of disseminating power across the country. They should have the interest of the common person at heart. They should know the effect that goes, to this kind of people, the kind of household. Mine is mainly the business people, for example. Around CIA, I would say, even in the better parts of the rural areas in Kenya, they are involved in agribusiness programs. Like, for example, poultry farming. Maybe they have the egg hatcheries. You can tell me if those machines cannot run without electricity. And the immediate time you have the eggs in the hatcheries and the electricity goes, maybe for 2 or 3 days, or let's say the unit cost is so high you cannot afford, then the eggs, they cannot even hatch into the chicks that you want. And these are losses that keep, that keep coming up. And even you find that the corporate farms around these spaces, they shy away from investing in farmers in this line because the electricity is unreliable. But at the same time, as Kia have said, maybe, and I've heard you mentioning that maybe if you go to a hotel and then you find that you say the sun or the solar powered energy is so you can't rely on it 100% because you can only use it at some part of the day. That goes back to the fact that we cannot stand to have electricity, a story of the cartels benefiting at the expense of the life of the people, because it should be very reliable, very affordable, and sufficient enough to serve the interests, of the common person, the business people, the farmers, and even just across the board, even the hospitality industry. So it's a conversation that needs to be looked into with the seriousness it deserves, and no politics should be put into this. Like what I also want to, give a little bit into what Kevin has said just right now. Why is the deputy president coming up and telling us that now the government has failed in its mandate to, regulate these farms that are in the space of disseminating electricity across the country? And yes, he's in the government. So what has he been able to do? And he's been knowing that cartels have been doing this like he calls them. So we need not to see hypocrisy in this conversation. Let us come and, call the spade as it is, and these people who are not delivering and they are making Kenyans to really suffer a lot of losses brought into books at the end of the day. Yes. All
right, Ngugi, let's loop in this conversation of cartels, and there's also a story that has been captured on the front page of this Daily Nation on the cost of living. And as you can see, gas cylinders right here. And is this a cost? This is, it's the Daily Nation, yes. Speaks of, reveal how cartels ensure Kenyans pay dearly for cooking gas, and so deep-pocketed and well-connected in the monopoly that controls imports of liquefied petroleum gas, petroleum gas, that no player seeking to enter the industry gets past endless government bureaucracy. There are times we used to use electricity to cook. That is at my home. Today, you hear of having a coil, or you hear of having an electric cooker. You dread, and you resort to using gas, which again is even worse, because in 2 weeks your 13 cylinder is out completely.
Yes, we have cartels which have actually ended up making the cost of gas cooker actually more expensive compared to what it was before. But also, I think back to the conversation about the cost of electricity. I had the privilege of going through the study of going through the Energy Act 2019, and the Energy Act has certain provisions that allow for the billing for the electricity. And these provisions lead to now the gazettement by the minister on how billing should proceed on. And so it's ingenuine when a politician or a leader in this country comes and misleads the public for purposes of political mileage and says that we need to actually form or have sit downs with certain people to ensure that we have reduced power. Yet what we need to have is each one of us here today has a representative in parliament who is able to go back and debate and make sure that there is an amendment to this act called the Energy Act 2019, which is going to be a direct way of making sure that there is reduction of electricity. So this is not a political conversation. This is more of making sure that our representative in the sitting government go back and do what they need to do. And so the issue on also the gas cylinder issue, there's also a provision on how gas cylinders should be sold in the market and who should be licensed. And so this again an issue of corruption, whereby we have seen our leaders come time and again and say and claim that there's corruption and they have nothing they can do about it. And so this is a wake-up call to each one of us to actually reconsider who has a proper agenda, who is able to go back and fight the corruption come 2022, who is able to have policies that are going to make sure that the cost of living goes down. And so the cartel issue, the cost of living, the cost of a gas cylinder, the cost of electricity will go down if, again, we have people doing what they are meant to be doing. Our leaders, our politicians do what they are meant to be doing. Well put. Yeah.
All right, Nordin, I am sorry that this sensitive debate lands on you, and we kickstart on this one. Kenya holds its breath as ICJ rules on Somali Sea border row. And President Judge Joran E. will read out on the court's decision at 3 p.m., although Kenya made it clear that it won't recognize the ruling.
You see, I believe from the onset, the way we handled the matter wasn't the right way, by pulling out in water. You see, one of the professors of sea law in Kenya that we have is PLO Lumumba, who was approached by Somalia. But he refused because he says he's a Kenyan and he loves his country. You see, the way the IG's office runs the business of these countries is quite shambolic. Because now you go to a case, then you pull out. You see, even my brother here is an advocate. He'll tell you that already, you already know what's coming. You realize? So at the end of the day, this territory, our territory, it's sad how things are. And I saw the other day in Lamu, I don't know what we were trying to say, but we didn't say. In short, we were just sending them a message when the president was with the Kenyan Navy, right? Saying that we'll protect our territory, which is good. At the end of the day, you see, we remain to be neighbors, right? And whatever happens to that country happens to us indirectly, because you realize they are not stable as it is, okay? We have our army still there trying to make them stable. I believe we can have a compromise, or they can actually sit down and discuss, because just stamping leads us nowhere. Because, okay, let's say we decide to fight them and they fight back. Obviously, we'll take good care of them. We'll take care of them. But what happens after that? You see, because at the end of the day, a boundary, you see these boundaries we have in Kenya, they are not courtesy of us. They are courtesy of the colonial master, okay? So this leaves us in a shambolic place. I'm looking forward to what is going to be the judgment today, and listen, so that we can see what goes on. If they decide to appeal, that's upon them. But I'm looking to see the decision that is going to be made today. As I just give something small on what they talked about on the LPG and electricity. You see, the reason why we have this conversation is because of Chapter 6, leadership and integrity. Our leaders have failed that. They all failed because they are doing business with the Kenyans. We have a bandit system made of terroristic leaders in the economy. So our economy is meant to make sure the common man is milked dry, so that you are meant to wait for 50 shillings upon election. You see, right now, the number of middle class people we had under Kibaki's government and now, the number is different. You see, then that is what most of the people in middle class who don't vote, they don't tell us. They're always a step away from poverty. And the electricity scene in Kenya is, if we continue like that, we'll become like Nigeria. You know, Nigeria, you walk, everywhere is a generator. It's like it's like a festival. Yeah. And that is not what we need in a country like Kenya.
Electricity.
Exactly. Yes. It's all about Chapter 6, leadership and integrity. So when you're voting for your next leader, don't vote for a packet of flour, a 2 slices of bread or 200 shillings. Use your brain and vote for a forthright leader.
You said it's like a festival.
Yeah, it's like a festival.
I just have something to say regarding our dispute in Somalia.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite unfortunate that our neighbors really did not want to engage with us and use even our continental mechanisms in handling this conflict. I also feel that the speed, the speed at which our neighbors rushed to the Hague-based court is really suspect. And there's a saying, I think Kevin will help me with it. Yeah. There's a saying that our Luo friends say that whether Whitney or what?
Whether they Whitney or they Dickney.
What does that mean?
It means that we are not bowing out.
No, yes, that's it. My appeal, something that I can't repeat what Kevin has said this morning, but I know after this he will teach me. But it will be very detrimental for Kenya if we were to have a conversation that shifts our boundaries even an inch. I think the reason as to why we compromise with Migingo Island is because of our regional. I think our discussions with Uganda, and even then it was never even solved. But this is an international boundary, and for Kenya, any discussions around compromise, any discussion around Somalia should remember. It's not us to remember; they should remember. So I am with my country on this one, not even an inch. And even if it means that we have to pull out of each and every code that we have to pull out, we're going to do it. Because if we set a precedent that we can be moving boundaries at the request of people or using legal mechanisms. I read a theory that one of the main reasons as to why Somalia is so intent on having this discussion is because of the oil reserves on that particular place. This is a political, socio-economic issue for us. And so, as Kevin, repeat it. Whether they keep it or they
But wait a minute, what was it? What was it when Kenya said that they would love for us to have a gentleman's agreement? Let's come back on the table. Let's resolve this locally. Let's look at the interests of the region and all that. What did they mean when they were calling for the same, as opposed for them, appreciating the fact that this has gone to a higher court? I know you want to come in, Joseph. Let's allow the DPs to come in and then we come back to you, all right?
Did you say the DPs?
Not the DPs. The DPs is him. Whether they DPs or they
Kipni or they Dekni.
Yes.
What needs to happen, and from what my fellow colleagues on this panel are saying, is conversations and dialogue. And this is what really has salvaged Somalia. And they need to, as a people, remember that dialogue is much more better than war. Even as we speak today, we have our soldiers and global armies in Somalia trying to pacify the nation, trying to make things work. Not just for a few individuals who are in the government of the Republic of Somalia, but really for the entire citizenry of Somalia. And so my appeal and call is to have conversations. As I always keep saying, dialogue really is much more better and is an easier way of solving conflicts and dealing with the issues that really don't have to make people go into war. Now, Kenya has vested interests, and those interests border on oil and gas, particularly on that contested zone that we are talking about. And it's not bad for Somalia to have gone to court, because this is really a global affair, and so we also look forward to seeing how the court is going to dispense with this matter so that they set certain precedents for other areas that probably there are contests and issues that relate to natural resource management and all that. But then the question is, did it have to get to that point, especially for a nation that has seen Kenya as its second home? We have very many Somalis, I almost said Somalis in this country. And their presence here means that they also take Kenya as a place that is home, and that when things are not working back at home, they can get back here and feel comfortable, go to our schools, you know, walk into our supermarkets and they buy goods, get into our universities, and feel comfortable that they can actually relate to the kind of education system that we have. The government of the Republic of Somalia needs to consider those kind of issues, and if the judge in his ruling considers that Kenya and Somalia need to go back and have a sitting, then Kenya also needs to be, you know, because as a country walked out of the conversations and we said we cannot negotiate with Somalia on this issue. We also need to consider some softer, you know, make some softer grounds so that we have conversations happening and taking place. But I don't think that for almost 11 years we have seen war in Somalia, particularly when KDF got into Somalia in 2011. Somalia has been a country that is at war, and we now need to begin to look at what are these opportunities to bring back peace. And because Kenya is a haven of peace globally, and that is why we are leading the United Nations Security Council this month, and we are part of that for 2 years, let those good sentiments and good virtues of peace resonate back to Somalia, even in this war that we have with them.
And as you speak of the soldiers, indeed, there's a piece that has been captured on page 6 and 7 of the Standard newspapers, war on terror shifts, that is on terror, and also as we have these disputes that we have, KDF stays put in Somalia. Just for it, as you weigh in on this, whichever way the ruling will be, there's going to be some ramification to the same.
Well, I think matters of international relations remain very sensitive across board. And the issue of Kenya and Somalia is not unique. Remember, we're also having another pending issue between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan about the River Nile.
Right.
And the huge dam that Ethiopia is putting up. Because at the back of it, water is life. That is number one. It drives agriculture, it drives fishery, now in our case of the Indian Ocean, and also it's a security issue. You give up and just a step of your water zone, and somebody can set up a camp there, military camp or otherwise. We have seen fishing boats being confiscated between Russia and China because it is an issue of security. Also, it's an economic issue because our country is just not the land. It's also the waters that surround it. Remember, the reason we have our port in Lamu and Mombasa is because of the same route of the Indian Ocean. If we give up whatever Somalia wants to take from us, are we giving up our route? You know, and how does that impact on our economy? So it's a very broad issue. It touches on the importation, it touches on the taxation, it touches on fishery, it touches on security. But the matter is in court. We can only wait for the judgment to be pronounced. Kenya pulled out. We are a sovereign state. There is no agency that can come in today or hereafter and impose on how we can demarcate our country further. That is squarely upon us. So we can only wait and see what they're going to say. The ramification, and I hope, as you say, there's going to be some, I just hope that Somalia remembers that we have been hosting them politically, economically, over 2 decades. All their political decisions have been made here in Kenya. Their security agencies, we help them plan and formulate how
I hope it's not a blackmail in any way.
It's not a blackmail. We're just saying the reason we are inviting them to the Mantok, the reason we are inviting them to an outside court settlement is because we are neighbors, and we have been and we shall remain to be. So we don't have to go out of our way and involve other agencies. And remember, Kenya says we pulled out because we smelled there was no goodwill. There were some agencies behind that case. And that's
what are the facts here? Somalia is so confident that this is their area, as much as Kenya
have they just realized that now? Since 1960. We've had Somaliland, we have Somalia, we have Djibouti and Eritrea. These have been our neighbors in extension. Have they just realized today that Kenya has been using
it was not an idea whose time had come. It has come now.
No, that tells you there are some underlying factors that have not been pronounced publicly. And as Kenya, we are not letting. This one, not because we are Hustler Nation or we are from the other side, we are Kenyans.
You know, let me loop in Tabitha on this. Tabitha, when this started, and looking at the proceedings in court and all that, it appeared like Somalia had a lot of backing from the other side, the international side, and a majority of external hands, so to speak, were in favor of Somalia. What does it speak to you when we say there's more than meets the eye? Do you suppose that this could have been triggered by indeed the external hands?
Before I respond to that, I think it is so unlikely when Josephat pronounces Kenya as a whole hustler nation, depending on what he's talking about. So I think it should restrict what he's
saying. He did not say that, did he?
No, we are regardless of our affiliation.
Regardless of our affiliation, yes, we stand as Kenyans now.
Yes. But not as hustlers. So
all right.
on the note of there might be much reading that we are not seeing or meeting the eye than just what we are seeing in this whole conversation of Kenya-Somalia border row. I think that it is true, because like what Josephat has said, it can't be just all of a sudden issue that they've woken up and realized that a part of Kenya belongs to Somalia. And at the same time, they work so strategically to have a backing from all these particular regions. And
I think we lost her. And all right.
But we honestly would have opted for a more, if it was not just a matter of, the dispute itself, then we would have had a dialogue that would have been so fruitful in a way that we would have still had the neighborliness. Because at the end of the day, if this conversation is heading the direction it is, and Kenya is going to feel like, they were neighbors, we have been cohabiting with them, we even have some of their, citizens in this country, they're living very peacefully, they're not being treated like non-Kenyans, then what was it so difficult for them to also have this conversation with us as neighbors who are very accommodative? So I think, in my own opinion, there is so much that is in this matter than just what meets the eye, and if it is, it's just a matter of time, we shall know, literally what is the intention behind this. Because like what Josephat said, not just a matter of them waking up one day and thinking that Kenya owns a bit of part of what should be a Somalia land. So yes.
All right, we shelve that conversation. I know there's so much that has been captured in regards to politics, the nominations and the performance of governance of the papers, performance of governance stories. There's also that one on the women who are seeking to get into politics. I know that is one that you'd want to weigh in. But anyway, because they're all about politics and we're talking about youth and politics, I'm sure that somehow they'll find their way here. But we do not go without, one word celebrating athletes who are doing us proud in Boston.
Well, Kenya is still, again, we cannot keep away politics from this. Yeah. And I believe if we continue as a nation supporting our athletes out there, then we'll keep on shining. And maybe politicians should also borrow from our athletes, but the excellency that we display out there in international races, the same should also come out from our leaders. We should also excel in actually what they are meant to be doing. So congratulations to the Kenyans who, Benson and Diana, who made us proud yesterday. Yeah.
One word, or we proceed to the next conversation.
No, I think
is the best story of the papers today.
Yes, I hope there'll be a state reception when they come home.
Oh, forget it.
That's my hope.
That's my hope.
Actually, for me, beyond the state reception, I always think about it in the long term. We need to do better for these Kenyan women and men who are busy out there across the world making Kenyans proud. We need to secure their intellectual property. We need to secure their finances. We need to ensure that their legacy is felt and that they live a life of dignity. I mean, how many of us feel like our own athletes don't, pair up well as compared to the global stars? I mean, what is the missing link? What is the missing link between Usain Bolt and Benson Kipruto? Is it management? Is it, issues of, what is it? How can we sell their brand in a way that their names resound nationally and globally? They make money out of it and they live lives of dignity like the stars that they are.
All right.
That's my question.
All right. Now we get to, youthful figures here. So you want to say something?
You see, I believe our leaders should learn or take a course on patriotism from our sportsmen and women. Because even if people like Harambee Stars can be humbled 5-0 and they take it with stride, and go tomorrow and get another 1 million. It is okay. That's on a light note. All I'll say is the Ministry for Sports we need to have a radical surgery of how we handle our sports activities. One, they need better facilities. She talked about management. We need to look at the management. There's something I heard Kipchoge say the other day, that out there, they are revered, they are loved, they are respected. But in here, none of the same happens. We need to change that mindset. Where you believe that politician is way better than that athlete who's putting your name on the map, while this other one is dragging your name down the mud. So we need to refocus on those who are heroes, on heroines, because that's what they do. Yeah. When they run, and that national anthem is sung, wherever they are running, that is giving Kenya a good name. So I believe the sports sector, we need to have a radical surgery so that we can be able, one, to make them, have a long-term career, which will bring profits, because you're not running for nothing. You also have to have an economic value, you realize. So the moment the leaders actually see sports as something that can be an economy and something that is viable, then we can focus on that. Kevin.
Linda, this is really against all odds. If you look at the kind of stories that we've been talking about our country, you know, even these ladies and gentlemen have to come back here and contend with issues of high power rates. They have to, for those who have kids, they have to think through how to take their children back to school. And they had to circumvent all these challenges and really run and ensure that Kenya is up there. They didn't think about all these problems. They didn't think about the dealership that our leaders have to, you know, that our leaders have to take us through every single day. And so they stood against all odds and ensure that the national anthem of Kenya was sung. That really, in my view, should be the spirit that our leaders should consider also, you know, having that they are servant leaders, and so service really becomes top against the deals that they are busy crafting and ensuring that Kenyans are paying for. Otherwise, from where I am seated, I'm hoping that the president will do what President Museveni did, give our athletes, you know, insurance covers, ensure that they have vehicles by government. And because this country, we have General Motors that is manufacturing vehicles here. We have Isuzu, we have Toyota, we have all these companies here. Why can't the president, through the Ministry of Sports or directly as the president of the Republic of Kenya, get into conversations with companies that can make the lives of our athletes much more better? Right. Look at when they pass on, what happens? Joe Kadenge was here and people had to do fundraising to raise 200 million for him to be buried. We have athletes who get sick. We have to keep, you know, sending money through WhatsApp and these still numbers. The government has to be very deliberate, and this is really a call that the kind of sacrifices that our athletes are going through is not for their own personal, you know, benefit, because they have a choice of saying, why should I go and run for Kenya? There are others who have actually changed their nationalities and they're running for other countries, but our athletes meet with them there and they still beat them. Right. Your Excellency the President, we want to see a different president so that when you retire and you go home, our athletes can actually stand and say that you walked with them when they went through all these odds to make Kenya and Kenyans proud.
Let's get to the conversation of youth and politics. Tabitha, I loop you in, and that we also equate to what has been captured across all the papers in regards to the voter registration process and IBC's report or recent report. Mount Kenya fails to enlist voters, while Rift Valley, on the other hand, you know, has shown exemplary. I don't know whether that's a performance in terms of voter registration. The Hustler Nation should be very happy by now. I don't know what that speaks. But then I loop you in to weigh in on the same as we get to the conversation of youths and politics. Tabitha.
Yes. I think the whole issue around voters registration, in line with the youth, is something that we should not even sit down here and say the Hassas are happy about or the other team is happy about. We are all in agreement that Kenya sometimes, or in these times we are living, like we have just been talking about how we are having electricity issues, and this goes back to integrity and leadership. Now, what is it that is going to make us, you know, how some of the leaders who will be having Kenyans at heart and this kind of issues solved? And that will only be if you have a voter or if you have been registered as a voter. So this cannot be a politics of who is benefiting or who is happy. As Kenyan youth, if you're watching this, you do not have an option. If you really want to, be heard and be listened to, it's only through that vote you're going to take. And therefore, let us just turn up in our large numbers. If you do not have a voters, you're not registered as a voter already, you take your time and go and get that vote. That is the only way we're going to elect leaders with integrity, leaders who can bring change. And also that is the only way we can, have a power of a gain at the table at the end of the day, because if we do not do these things, and then at the end of 2022, we are going to be back here and complain that, we elected so and so and they're not doing this. We elected this president, they're not performing like this. This our member of parliament is not deliberating what he's doing. Yeah. Did you take your time and have you're registered as a voter and you voted for this leader, or it's just now the aftermath? So how can we deal with that? You just go, it's your civil right and democratic right to vote for your leaders, and you cannot do this if you do not follow the due process, which is through also the voters registration. So let us do this. It's really important for us as young people.
All right, we take this conversation a little bit first, so at least we're able to be more lively and address as many issues as possible, because there's so much that needs to be addressed. And coming to you, Josephat, we talk about voter registration, yet there are millions of uncollected ID cards that lie, in chief's offices and all that. I mean, should we have started with that first?
When you talk about integrity and leadership, the latter part, leadership, is largely political. And our political process involves us involving ourselves in the electioneering, which is what we are approaching. And I agree with what Ogutu says, that regardless of your affiliation, political affiliation, you need to register. If you're a Kenyan above 18, get your ID and register as a voter. So that when the time comes for you to step up and show up and have the leadership of your choice, who will have more integrity in the next government than this one, you will be able to participate and actively have your voice and your choice made when that comes. So I am also attaching myself to her sentiment and calling upon all Kenyans who are not duly registered as voters and who have not collected their IDs to kindly please do so. All parents, the much you want to see in the future in terms of change for your child depends on how you empower them today. And the empowerment begins with, if they are over 18, have them get their ID and have them register as a voter so they can make an informed decision when the time comes. Now, we have millions of IDs that are lying idle in the chiefs' camps and offices. And I have seen a call from the government asking the chiefs even to go homes and make phone calls and mobilize people to come and collect their IDs. That I support, because I agree, we are a nation driven by choice that have consequences. And the political choices we make, we can see clearly they are affecting our economy. Perhaps civic education needs to be given more prominence, more support, and it has to be well expressed in our community so that people understand that voting and electioneering process is not just about the politicians. It's about your life. It's about the next 5 years. And the much we can organize that depends on how well we are organized now as a community. So it is upon us, from our family settings and our local settings, to go out, help somebody collect their ID, help people register for registration. I know there are pockets in the country, like my constituency in Kiambaa. I think Kiambu is much affected because also in Juja, people are not registering with the IBC because they have pending petitions. And those are going to be resolved. And IBC has come out and pronounced itself on the matter that they are going to offer special timings for areas where there are by-elections. I'm sure even in Meru there is one, and Taita Taveta there is another one. That is not an area for concern for persons, for us as Kenyans. People largely are not affected by those by-elections. Areas where everything else is running smoothly, please, let us mobilize, regardless of our political affiliations. Somebody says that the Hustler Nation, we are happy with the delay.
Are you not?
No, because...
Okay, are you not happy that... Okay, well, all right.
We want a landslide win.
Yes.
So we want more people to register. We want a lot of people to show up and vote because we know the minority. And Ogutu is going to cross over together with Osido to this side come next year.
No.
The minority are going to have their voice. The majority are going to have
You can take that.
All right, Gugi, do you agree that there's a lot of civic education that needs to be done, to be honest? Because looking at our parliament today, has the highest number of representation of youths. Probably that was a step towards the right direction, in comparison to all the other parliaments that we probably had before. Are we at that point where we can confidently say that Kenyans are not aware of how important the political space is in terms of shaping our future, how important their involvement in the political space is in terms of shaping their future, or they just choose to ignore?
I agree with you that civic education is not being done as it used to be earlier on.
Okay.
And I don't know whether to blame this on our leaders not actually pushing the agenda, because most of us, if today we are having any conversation in any sit down, and I've heard him mention the hustlers. I don't know how many hustler politicians are out there pushing their followers to actually go out and register. I don't know how many leaders in current sitting government are actually also pushing for this agenda. I have not had media pushing for it. I only see a bit of one pager in the newspaper mentioning about registration and collection of IDs, but I have not, it's not as regular on radio as it used to be, and so we are failing in this civil education. But again, the IBC has just been reconstituted. Maybe we could blame it on that we only have the team. The team just came into place just I think this month, and this team is meant to actually push. That's one of the agendas, the IBC, to go out in every county, in every ward, and push for this civil education. And so the bigger blame should be on this, but at the same time we should be able to say that they have not maybe had the proper instructions yet, and over time maybe it's too early again to say that the numbers are not yet there, and we should expect that the commissioners will be able to push and have this mobilization for civic education done.
Why the push? Anyway, let's answer that after this short break. Why do we have to be pushed for this? Are we being pushed because we don't understand, or we are just being pushed because, well, after all, Kenyans have gotten to levels where they think their vote does not count after all? Have gotten to levels where, well, life is too expensive for them to even imagine to go and queue. So at least you can register as a voter. Maybe to go and vote a leader who's not going to be elected anyway, even if they had the most numbers. You have heard Governor Kimemia say that there's the deep state. So in a scenario where there's a 50-50 aspect of love for two candidates, you can almost be 100% sure that that one that has the backing of the deep state will carry the day. Is that the vote, or that is the say of the deep state? After this break.
Oh, hi guys. Sorry, you found me 5 minutes before I started recording, but anyway, so most of you have been asking me why I started Lady CLC 19 with Joy Rongo. I have also had my own share of pain. I know how it feels to want to give up. This is basically here to speak hope and inspire somebody who's going through a rough patch, to tell them that they can turn their pain into power. Our guests are normally here to share their experiences so that you can know somebody else did it, so you can also come out of it stronger and better. Let me go to my recording, and remember to always stay tuned every Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
Undertaking husband duties on a boyfriend tender.
Guys, with bromance, do you share your woman with the bro?
Have a sister? Give me your sister. I show you how these things are done.
So you go release and be like,
Men supporting each other, not only financially, but also socially.
Don't mingle with women you can't deal with.
Is there really a formula for dating and marriage?
Some men are procreational, some men are recreational.
Every Wednesday on TV47, the Men's Conference brings you a cocktail of top-notch advice to breed alpha males or alpha females in the society.
Naweza tumeite nje tutesiwe do. Mimi naitwa Ben. Mimi ndo rafiki ya babako.
Tumeleta dozi zako usimize mtoto.
And now we have to deal with a drug addict.
Yani ulio mzai wako.
I had to.
Sema! Dozi zangu ziko wapi?
Ben!
Tuisheni Uganda.
The road to 2022 is becoming tougher and trickier with each passing day.
Na wawache kuja kutuletea makasiriko.
Political aspirants in a dilemma whether to change allegiance or not.
Nonetheless, you have justified your change of stance.
It's my bloody personal politics.
Tell them this. They could have gone to do law so that they become judges. They do not have the capacity, training, or skill to interpret a court order.
As a journalist, you have also had occasion to actually do some research. Read the judgment of
the nature of our job to have.
The
question is very specific.
Listen to me,
my question is very specific.
Every Monday at 9:30 p.m., Pundits Night brings you inclusive and candid conversations with the pundits. It just doesn't land on your plate. It takes hard work.
They require highly skilled labor.
Time.
8 months, and that means you have given it a lot of care, a lot of time.
And resources.
I remember I had invested so much in fertilizer, like I just didn't want anything to go wrong.
From a seed, seedling, to a fruit or vegetable, as well as a fertilized egg to a chicken, duck or turkey. Here at Kilimo Diaries, Sandra Wahito takes us through it all every Sunday at 6:30 p.m.
In the running of their country, they tend to defy. And so these numbers could be an indication that young people are defying these processes and saying, okay, you have this process of registration, but we are not taking part. We don't want to be engaged.
Let me cut you short. I'm told that we have to fix your microphone briefly, right? Maybe you can share. I hope there's no COVID-19, so worry, you know. All right. Yes,
is it better now? Yeah, so when young people feel that they cannot engage meaningfully, politically and economically, they tend to defy. And I think that this is something that we should look into in the coming 2 weeks. But, you know, pale kwa ground, there's a way we register voters. And the truth is we register voters basing on our tribal outfits. Yeah. We get very ethnic. And if we can tap into history, the last registration was highly ethnic. We had all our leaders, you know, pulling all stops to ensure that we have as many numbers of our people as possible. We're not seeing that happening now. We're not seeing money being pumped into this process. We're not seeing this ethnic, you know, let's call it the true as it is, this ethnic balkanization. Ati sisi watu wetu kama Wakikuyu tuchukue kura ndio tuweze kutoa fulani, ama Wakale wachukue kura ndio waweze kulinda kura fulani. That was a very big driving force in the last registration. I remember in my constituency, we had border borders all over, picking young people, old people from one point to another. I think in a week we were able to hit over 80% of voter registration. But it was highly political. It was not issue-based. It was not you come and register as a voter and you pigie mtu fulani akuletee maji. It was not about the future of the country in the sense of, you know, from a point of growth or growth of the economy or issue-based politics. It was we need as many numbers as we can get to protect this vote and to get our people in. But that, we didn't ask about now when they get in, what happens to our economy, what happens to our jobs, what happened to our healthcare. And so if young people watched that process 4 years ago and they have seen the consequence, if they feel that their needs have not been met or they have watched this country operate for 4 years without meaningful turnaround, they may be wary of coming out to pick their voter registration details. And this is a tragedy for politicians. You could actually be holding 1 million political gatherings with people who are not going to vote. Because if we are saying that the highest target is 18 to 35, and these are the many people, as in Aonjio and Nangazile campaign rallies, so could it be that you are mobilizing people for pictures and optics, lakini they won't vote? Yes. Because they don't even have the requirements to vote. Could it be that you're talking to the wrong people and the wrong audience? And could it be that, as an emergency measure, that all our political leaders then need to engage their target audience and ask a very basic questions? Wow. Because mmekuja kwa hii mkutano yangu leo, muko na kura. Let's begin from there.
Okay, Nordine, as you come in, young people are at the heart of this, and it appeared as though we are now active in politics, as though we now understand what is happening, as though we now want to be involved, as though we want to be on the table, as we always say. But then again, it appears like we're not interested as such. What does it speak, especially at this point when, the politics of the day is quite heated?
We are trying to be politically woke. We are not yet there.
Okay.
And I'll reference this to one thing. There's a humorous video of Kibaki going around where he says, if you don't have that voter's registration, you're useless.
Yeah.
We see it as a joke, but it's true. I'll give you an example. The importance of that vote. Your member of parliament was part and parcel of the finance bill that passed in parliament. That is making you cry out here now. You realize? So if you're a member of parliament that you voted for or you didn't vote for, good or bad leaders are elected by those who vote and those who don't vote.
Okay.
Now, we tend to forget, we say we want a place on the table. You can't have a place on the table, one, if you don't have a say in who goes into office. That is part and parcel of the journey. You cannot want to eat while you're not part and parcel of cooking. So, to the young people out there who think that politics is boring, a waste of time, remember that politics is what drives how your life will be in the next 5 years. All right? So we need to wake up to the realization that this journey, you see, the old folk that we are seeing there that people talk about who will win courtesy of the deep state or no deep state, their time is going to come and they'll go. You have the advantage of time. Which country are they leaving behind for you? And what will you take up from them? That comes from this is to the young people. Whether you're in whatever divide you are in, you need to realize one thing. That a war between Raila and Ruto is none of your business. A war between Uhuru, Raila, none of your business. Or between the Okash, none of your business. Because at the end of the day, the war you're fighting is one towards political and economic freedom. And this, I can tell them to borrow a leaf from our brothers from the EFF in South Africa. And our brother, Bobby Wine from Uganda. You're talking about the future because these people will be taken care of by nature in due course. You have the country to lead. We keep telling ourselves, or we are being told that we are leaders of tomorrow. My friend, there's no tomorrow without now and today. It starts now. So if you haven't taken that voter registration card, you're waiting for someone to give you 50 shillings so that you go and vote and take the card, or so that you go and register, you want 100 shillings. You are losing the plot. You see, we'll forever talk about 75% without any effect until we have a say. You see, 75% of the population without having the registration card, you will never have a say in whatever. So we need to make that statistic become a reality. So that, you see, everyone now, all the political leaders, the big players, talking about the youth. Raila the other day was saying he was 6,000 shillings to the unemployed. And now you see Ruto is saying 100 million shillings. You see, the problem is we listen to such things and we don't realize that, you see, we're being conned here. So you have to have a say in what happens going forward. So wake up. If you're watching today, wake up, go to the nearest go to the nearest registration center. But let me also play the devil's advocate. You see, there's also a challenge that we have realized, that the people who are in charge of the registration of persons have failed. They are earning a salary and are not working, because so many young men and women don't have ID cards. Right. Yes, we have those that are lying idle there, but we have to realize, and this is something that was evident in Garissa, when Raila said he'll help them get ID cards. We have people who have been vetted for the past 10 years. Now they are almost getting to 35 or 40 with no ID cards. Right. And they claim to be Kenyans without the crucial document as an ID. So these people who are in office, you earn a salary for not working. So you're eating without actually working. They need to wake up. This issue of IDs should be continuous, so as the voter registration. Right. Because I believe, even if you tell them today you've opened the window to get an ID, they can't get it in 2 weeks. It's not possible unless they have a godfather somewhere, or unless someone will pay it. You realize, if someone is running for an elective seat, will actually pull strings. So it has, this process has actually showed so much that we need to focus on. So as a country, to the young people, wake up, go get that voter registration card, so that you can be able to decide who is going to be in office, from MCA to MP, senator, governor, president. Because without that say, you will keep crying and ranting on social media for the rest of your life.
How much of a say do we have? This is our ANC party leader, Musalia Mudavadi, to Kenyans on what Right Honorable Raila Odinga speaks of now that you mentioned that. Our economy is doing badly and we need practical solutions to resuscitate it, not lies meant to woo the youth. The country's pockets are empty, and let no one lie to you that there is money to be handed out. We need practical solutions of providing decent jobs and not handouts and wheelbarrows. He said it in an apparent reference of Odinga as a campaign, and also definitely to the Hustler Nation. And so while Right Honorable Raila Odinga castigates the Hustler Nation, on the other hand, he's giving solutions that, well, appear very nice, but, you know, as well, not so practical. While the DP, you know, points a finger at the BBI process that says that they're going to give youths lots of, you know, goodies and all the sweetness that were incorporated in the document, he as well comes with solutions that really do not appear to be realistic. And when we speak about going out there to vote, it is all right, it is good. At least you can cast a vote of, out of the 6, maybe get one that is genuine. But in most cases, it's not.
Linda, this is really why young people need to go out there and consider that these numbers will mean something. And it's something I keep saying. The president that we have today was declared on a meager 8.6 million votes at 53.4%. The total number of registered voters under 35 in 2017 was 9.9 million. It means that if the youth wanted to have their own president, they would have their own president. Register silently and don't tell anyone. Don't brag about it. Just organize around who you want to elect as president. Go register and ensure that you vote for that person and protect that vote. Because it is you who also spoke about the deep state in reference to the former the governor, Mheshimiwa Kimemia. The youth can be able to have a say in almost all these elective positions. The problem that we have done is that we have abrogated this right to a select few individuals whom we think that they were born, raised, bred, and they will die politicians. That narrative needs to be changed. And that is why you see politicians coming up with exciting and enticing words, including figures. Let me tell you something. Kazi Mtaani, Nairobi alone, if you were to use Mheshimiwa Raila's words, it is a fallacy. Leave alone the 100 million that the chief hustler is telling us about. It is not possible. Government dispenses money on a budget. There is no government that will carry money in bags. The way they are given at Karen is not how they will get it when that gentleman is president. Because in fact, let me tell you, the president plays zero role in the budget making process. He only assents to the finance bill after the speakers of both houses go to State House and give him the document. And then he says, okay, this is what you have agreed on. So this is what we are going to use to dispense money. I put my signature. Issues of public participation must and should concern the youth. issues of civic education, this issue we are discussing here, must and should concern the youth. Kazi mtaani, 552,000 youth were earning 457 shillings per day. If you multiply that, it gives you around 9 billion shillings per year. Who in this world of Kenya will give you 6,000 shillings as youth? Our institutions of higher learning every year churn out, without tertiary colleges, 1.4 million youth who are expected to find jobs out there or to create jobs, depending on how the environment looks like. If you bring in the tertiary colleges, this TVETs is 1.8 million. Now, if you were to multiply 6,000 shillings times 1.8 million youth, how much is that? It's over the budget of this country 13 times. Whether it is Mheshimiwa Ruto's government or Mheshimiwa Raila's government, it is not possible that we will be telling youth out there that we will carry money and give you, because it cannot work. Linda, this government has 3,000 shillings that is paid to the elderly, you know, which they are expected to get every month. Do you know how much that money is? I wish I had the time to check through Ministry of Labor. It is more than almost half of our budget as a country. And Kenya's budget today is at almost 3.4 trillion. Right. And 78% of that budget, Linda, is being financed through debts, you know, which we continue to pay, and the borrowing scale is going so much high up. The youth of this country can tilt this conversation by saying, we are the most innovative, we are the most talented. Why don't we consider ignoring the Rutos of this world, the Railas of this world, and have our own candidates, both at MCA level, to the women rep level, to the governor level, up to the presidential level. And then we work with IEBC and tell them we have a group of boda people that, because of the nature of their work, they cannot be going to queue. Because these are people who have to go and make money, you know, by transporting people here and there. Agree with the IEBC officer at that particular ward and set up a time. Tell them, kujeni between 11 and 2 p.m. We will organize our people, register them very, very fast, and then you go and do your work. We have given this opportunity to politicians to be calling us into rallies and then telling us what they should have done before this issue of the presidency came. And that is why youth are, you know, just sitting at home. And I wouldn't be surprised, Linda, if the apathy, the levels of voter registration will continue to dwindle like this until when we attach value to why people must go and register as voters.
But now the questions then would be, Tabitha, just who are these youth that are willing to go out there? Look at the faces that we have for presidency. How many youths do we have? How many of them have come out to say that they would wish to go for it? Look at countries like Zimbabwe, for instance. I like using an example there because I've keenly observed what is happening there. The likes of Nelson Chamisa, I would want to assume that he's actually even surpassed the bracket of youths. But then again, at least a young tongue who appears to come and, you know, say that I can actually do this. How many, you know, have come out to support him? They all think it's still not mature for this game. Look at what it is that we spoke about, Bobby Wine. How many, in as much as there's that push, go on, you're doing a good job, believe that he's mature enough to take up the challenge? How many are, you know, there to believe that the likes of Julius Malema are, you know, strong enough to take up the challenge? And in most cases, you'll hear them say that, you know what, huyu bado hajafika. Probably if we were to conduct a poll right here and ask how many of you would have the confidence in saying, let's front Kevin Osido in the event that he says and, you know, he declares that, well, I'd want to go for presidency. How many of us would have the confidence to say that, you know what, Kevin Osido can take up the challenge? Tabitha?
Right. That is a very noble question, Linda. I will say that. How are we ready to have a youthful representation, even at the national level as a presidency? You've given a good example of Kevin. Then maybe it will go back into what has Kevin been doing over time. And that is the biggest question. Like, have we seen him in the front line doing, even in the politics area for a long time, advocating for some of the issues that relates to the public? How vocal has he been in this kind of matters that are related to significance to the young people? And it's because some of the youths out here, they have not been given the nurturing they deserve. They lack the role models in politics. Or even somebody will argue with me, do we even have the best role models in our political, in a political environment that the young people really look and say, because of so and so, I think I can make myself, or I'm ready to take this task. So at an individual level then, and a young person will say then, I'm not ready to be a politician because I'm not just ready. So this is because our old politicians, they have not been in the key line in nurturing the young people to take up the mantles at the end of the day. And that is something that I think needs to take place. We need to see that we are nurturing them, because it's not just a matter of giving them these particular positions. How well can they perform? And I strongly believe that the young people, they are the best minds if given opportunity to serve, and they can deliver on some of the best policies and even bring the changes that we want to have. But at the end of the day, it can't just come through the mayor say that a young person is strong, a young person is opinionated, a young person has those innovations. Have they been practicing them over time? And that is where the credibility issue will come through, and somebody will say that no, it's not yet just that time for a young person to take this kind of position. So that calls for a need for the young people to really be involved in this politics, the aggressiveness, even in the coming election 2022. How well are we prepared as young people also to go and vie for these positions, and even as a result get some of those nominations that will ensure that in the line as we get the nomination or get the position, we nurture ourselves up to the extent that we'll say we are ready to take the most senior position in the political arena in this country. Another thing I will say that, the issue of maybe the hustlers claiming they can give the youth 100 million, and Honorable Raila saying that they can give the youth around 6,000. I'll say this is like they're auctioneering us. We got the highest bidder have the say at the end of the day. Very non-deliverable terms, or I'll say numbers that they're giving us. We need to have leaders who are giving us solutions in terms of strategies and policies, things that are sustainable at the end of the day. They are really thriving on the ignorance of the young people. They know the young people do not have employment. The young people, they're not going out for information. They do not even want to take part in the conversation that relates to politics or youth in politics, because they believe that at the end of the day they're going to be given some of these things that they're being told by the politicians in terms of money. Money will come, maybe you'll be given 500 shillings because the politicians want to lure you. But what does it hold ground in terms of you in future having such positions, or even having say at the end of the day? So the ball is in the court of a young person. Right now, what we need to do as young people also is to support literally, not just any young person, but a young person who has a track record that when they're given the opportunity to serve, then we can say that at least they were given this and they were able to serve as an example that indeed the young people can deliver as leaders significantly as the older folks that we have in the political arena. And I believe that we have so many of those young people. All they need basically is an environment and even the change of the mindset, that a young person is not just a reckless or ruthless person, but there are people who literally can change the way we perceive or control matters in this country, in the political arena as it is. So I think we need to start believing in the young people, but the young people also have a lot of significance in the way they carry out themselves and how they present themselves as the national leaders, and their track record needs to speak for themselves. It's not just a matter of being given or a matter of being believed in. What are we really doing that is showing that indeed we are capable and we can deliver on some of these things? So yeah, it's a very important conversation, I think, we should even have past this leader.
All right, thank you so much. Now, Ngugi, affirmative action is here with us today. But again, the youths have gotten to levels where they say, you know what, we probably don't even need this affirmative action processes that are ongoing. The women are saying so. In as much as we embrace the same, because then at least it seeks to get that aspect of equilibrium. We realize that, again, there are some of them who sit pretty and they are weight. And one would want to ask, how different is the political terrain today and back then? Because these leaders whom we call oldies will tell you that they got into politics when they were way young, and therefore it's not a justification for the young turks to say that, you know what, create a safe space for us, create an environment that is conducive. Why don't you fight your way up? When we talk about nurturing them, when we talk about creating a space for them on the table, just what exactly do we mean? And in comparison to what played back then, how difficult is it today?
Well, it's we have not had we've not had mentors as young people to hold our hands, and I believe the last story I read of someone who was mentored into politics was current senator of Nairobi, Johnson Sakaja, who while in campus he was introduced into politics by the former president Moi Kibaki. And so the process has not been very encouraging for the young people to come on board. This the current position currently seems like politics have been left to certain families and certain individuals of certain age groups. And for any young person to come on board and to actually step up and get represented, then you need to have the support of either a political party or a political god in this country for you to actually step up into that position. And so it has, even with the provisions of the constitution that there is no discrimination on age, that there is a provision that there is affirmative action, whereby we have groups like women and disabled and the young people being part of that group of people who have particular categories in our law being provided for them to actually step up. I believe young people have failed to take advantage of these opportunities that we have been provided with. Yet we have this new radical constitution that allows for this for this avenue for young people to step up. So it's different from what it was before, whereby one needed to have their hand held, and now we have opportunities being provided to us young people to step up, and we have failed to secure and step up into these positions. Yeah.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right. You can come in.
So let's talk about mentorship. And I'm a firm believer of mentioning names as far as mentorship is concerned. How we define mentorship in this country is in twofold. You either pick a young person to be just your assistant to help you, or you give them or you pick a young person and empower them with practical tools on how they can be you or even better than you as far as leadership is concerned. And we have seen a few women. I'll talk about women. The Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya has really been instrumental in mentoring young women in her space. Her Chief of Staff, Madam Rose Washuka, is a product of mentorship from her office and also from Ambassador Amina Mohammed. I think she rose from being an intern to being a Chief of Staff. My own boss, Governor Anne Waiguru, one of the things that I would want to say on air is that she has never told me to hold her hand back, or she has never told me to wait at the waiting bay of a conference room. She wants me in the room. She wants me behind her. She wants me to contribute. That is the only way you can get as many young people. Even for Sakaja, he wasn't in the room just watching Mwai Kibaki. He was contributing. He, with others, helped form TNA, which became now the force that that would later come to lead this country. The active, how we engage young people makes all the difference. If they're in the room just for you to use them and give them handouts, if they're silent in the room, that is not mentorship. And that is why I struggled. Last week Baba was in a meeting with Mount Kenya tycoons, and he said that young people have to wait for their turn. I struggled with that because in that room on a particular day, more than 60% of the attendees were young people, and I know them. Some of them want to be MCAs, others want to be governors. In fact, I think his management team in Central Kenya is 90% young people. So when he say that we have to wait for history, and yet they're the ones who are carrying his brand in central Kenya. I struggled with that. But that is the unfortunate reality of how our senior politicians, most of our senior politicians, carry young people. That, okay, fine, you have the energy, you have the skills, you have the innovations, but not just yet. So what happens to these skills and innovations? They end up being lost. And what happens then to the fate of this country? You end up having the same leaders over and over, years and years, because you really haven't activated these young people to become and to occupy spaces that you are in. So in the next election, what we stand to see, and why I still support affirmative action, without those special seats, I am convinced that we will not even be having those young people in those spheres of influence, because we haven't really worked on ensuring that they are competent, that they have grown, that they can confidently articulate their issue, that they understand their country well. So these special seats are necessary up until to the point whereby this country understands that we have to move and handhold young people into these current spaces of influence if they are to lead Kenya for generations to come.
Well, Nordin, before you come in, let's have Josephat. And here we are. I don't know how much, a campaign process would be in terms of nurturing someone, because a majority of these people also have come out from, the campaign process. Oh, nilikuwa kwa campaign trail ya so and so I am good enough, I understand politics, I have been nurtured by this person. And in most cases, as you get into these campaign trails, then as young turks, as youthful characters, you're used as goons. You are gotten to levels where you're paid few coins here and there, and then you're told, go out there and disrupt this. And in most cases, you're used and dumped. Very few will always survive the tide.
Yeah, that is correct. And I think the campaign...
Let's have the mic up.
The campaign trails, the one thing they help with is exposure, the political exposure. Because when you're talking about mentorship, we are specifically talking about politics. And you realize that as a young leader in this nation, and I've been championing for involvement of the youth and the young people in the political arena, I find it challenging when most of our political parties, as my peers will agree, they are very reluctant on involving young leaders. That's why you see the premiers, the chiefs, the chairman and the executive. Rarely will you find young leaders or young people, youthful, don't have to be below 35, but youthful people, visionary as well and competent, involved and sitting at the table. And that is where the downfall begins. When the Right Honorable Raila says that the young people have to wait for their turn, I am happy to have him know today that he has overstayed in this political arena. He needs to have stepped away and let the young people have our space.
And the young are the likes of DP Ruto in this case?
Yes, he's the young and youthful, and he's been growing. And really? Yes, in my opinion, you cannot compare him with the Right Honorable. The reason the Right Honorable is feeling that the youth have to wait is because we are pushing him out of the political arena. And we are going to continue doing that until we get to the ballot. The next government must. This is not a negotiation. This is not a humble request. It is an expression of the youth that we must be fully involved because we are going to make the next government. People already, they are talking about 70% of the voters are going to be the young and youthful. That much, I agree. And hence, we cannot just be used, as you say, and dumped just to mobilize politicians and leaders into government, and then we are left out. No, this conversation starts and continues now, that the youth are actively willing and able to be involved in the process of making the government and running that government. Most importantly, it is important we understand that the statistics of voting are not going to change. The youth have been used and dumped in the past. But what is going to change is the result. This time we vote and stay. The other thing you find very disturbing is when you talk about voter registration and the campaign around mobilization. I am happy that today we are not trying to mobilize people based on our ethnicity or clan-based or tribalism, because the conversation has changed. We are united by one tribe, the socio-economic factors of this nation. It doesn't matter where Kia is coming from. She doesn't have to go home and say, watu wangu, kujeni sasa we can kick out Nurdin, or Ngugi and go say we need to kick out Osido. No, we need to transform the economic dynamics of this country. And the only way we can do that is to just come together as a nation, as a voting bloc, and register, mobilize all the aspirants, including the chief hustler himself. He's come out clearly and telling people, you need to get to the table. And the only way you can do that is to have your vote.
Nordine, as you weigh in on the same, and again, just take a random view of the leaders, young leaders that we have across the global fraternity. Let's pick the presidents that we have, Let's pick the most common one that we know, that one of North Korea, and his performance and how he handles government. And, the numerous of them that took, governments at a tender age or at a young age, that one that you'd consider as youthful age, their performance in comparison to the oldies.
You see, it will be unfair to
okay.
Because
the youth that we've elected to parliament today.
Let's talk about those ones.
Yes.
You see, when they are getting to parliament, there is a struggle. The youth, you see, we are an entire constituency. There's a struggle for political and economic freedom. Most of those who went into parliament forgot about that struggle. And I'll tell you why we are where we are, because we always, every electioneering period, we get seduced, we get misused, and at the end of the day, we are abused. And do you know why? We are not united. Let us be honest. If you're going to be united, and that is why they fear anything about unity when it comes to the youth, and that is why you have to be put in a partisan manner, in that you are fighting Raila's war, Ruto's war, Uhuru's war, which is none of your business at the end of the day. If, for example, your fellow youth is in UDA, the other one is in ODM or whatever, that is just a political party. He or she is channeling their political interest, all right? Because we can't have a party for youth. Under the law, it's not allowed, right? If you're in whatever party you are in, so long as for the youth, for us to change our misfortune, we have to have a common agenda. And the common agenda beats any selfish interest. Because when you find selfish interest outweighs the common agenda is how we are going to see this table. No one will invite us. Yeah. We have to invite ourselves. It's a mythic table. You can't see it, but how you get there, you invite yourself. And how do you get to invite yourself? By rallying your fellows to support the cause and the agenda. And the agenda here is how you are going to be politically free and economically free. Because it's for you to become economically free, you have to be politically free. Because at the end of the day, like she said, Raila said we have to wait. As she said that. You see, the sad reality is that, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? You see, him as a person, he will never mentor another Raila Odinga. Or Ruto cannot mentor another Ruto. Or Uhuru cannot mentor another Uhuru. Do you know why? You'll make them redundant.
Okay.
You mentor someone who will come to take over, because they'll get to a point where they know you. They know the way how to move. So they fear that. They want to stay there. So how do they do that? Isn't
the fear justified looking at how the hustler person is handling Baba today?
And do you know what they do? They register a party. You're given an entire youth wing. You're thrown there. Your biggest asset is the youth wing. For you, you are to rally numbers. For you, you are to demonstrate. For you, you are only to send political messages to the opponent. But when the party wants to make crucial decisions, you never called. So how do you do that? You have to be united. You see, the moment, it's a common trait. What even the colonialists did. Divide and rule them. Okay. So that you keep them busy focusing on non-issues. You're fighting Raila. You're fighting Ruto. You're fighting whatever. And you're losing the main focus is, how do I get to that table that they are? Because at the end of the day, as you fight, I'll give you an example. As you fight and you take hardline stands and you hate a certain political leader, I'll give you an example. Remember when Moses Kuria was sick, all these principles have seen him. What does that tell you? Politics is not about hatred, it's a matter of interest. So when the interest collides, the alignments change. So what am I saying in essence? And as I finish, Mandago clearly says it. Eka kwa lungs. Ikiisha, pumua and move on. Stop being a hardliner for things you know nothing about. Focus on your agenda. We need a common agenda so we move forward. Otherwise, we'll be here doing this, we'll be panel beaten to be doing this silly wars that take us nowhere. And then at the end of the day, you're given 150 shillings. How does that help you? It doesn't change your course. Every time, at the next election, you're 35, you're 40, you're 45. By the time you're 70, you keep talking of how you know these people, you can call them. But they never helped you. Because they know once they help you, they're redundant. So focus on how we can be united. Because the problem is, the issue about unity, is that everybody wants to be called a youth leader. I am the youth leader, I am the chairman. Those are all nonsensical titles that mean nothing. You need...
no, you cannot say that.
Let me finish. Those titles, let me tell you, those titles, without an agenda, head you nowhere. If those titles are only championship selfish agendas, they will never help the common youth. Because you cannot be a chairman or a leader of an entire group, and the only reason you are there, they don't know. You're only looking for space for yourself. That journey is headed nowhere. It's a dark tunnel that will never see the light of day.
I feel like saying, excuse me, teacher.
All right, and then Kevin, you come in.
Well, I agree with like 90% of what Norojin says. 90. I said 90%.
Fair enough, yeah?
So let's talk about the 10%, and this is from experience. When we say that we want to get young people on the table, I have been there for the longest time, and it involves having a proactive self-drive. That is what has led most young people, mostly from the peri-urban areas, ila kujitolea. In Swahili we say kujituma, and most young people have done that. And leading takes different forms. You can be a leader in your community, and that is why we have so many of them calling themselves youth leader. I myself has been a self-proclaimed youth leader in my county for the longest time, because I champion things that I feel are important for young people in my county, and that has worked for me and many like me, because once I'm in that space and I consider myself as a leader, it is an avenue for self-mentorship. Remember, I told you that this country struggles to mentor young people, mostly in the political realm. And so having a chance to walk that journey for yourself, having a chance to serve and lead, even on a volunteer basis, is very important. And I encourage as many young people, both male and female, to actually send themselves out to lead their communities without even having to wait. The struggle in this country, and why I think perhaps Norojin says that these titles are nonsensical, is because we have been forced to a particular corner, the corner of tokenism. This is how this country operates. Warogoro Kiai is a youth leader from Nyeri County. She is very proactive in mobilizing communities and women around, all those kind of causes. And so even people in my community know me and what I do. But because this country and our politics is not ready for youth mentorship. So they pick me, they pick another one from, like 3 or 4 to represent this brand that is young people. And so most young people now feel that we need to act in a particular way. We need to take hardline positions in a particular politics, for us to be seen, for us to be noticed, for us to be rewarded. And that is not how ideally politics should work and youth leadership should work. It should be representing young people to ensure that as many of us get into those spheres of influence. But how this thing has been conditioned and what we need to run away from in the next election is this concept of tokenism. That I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to insult DP so hard. I'm going to insult Baba so hard so that I am seen
and nominated
and rewarded in different spheres. So what happens to the many who are learned? What happens to the many who have got different skills and competencies, who don't want to insult, who simply want to serve in both the, in public service? What happens to them? So the feeling of being disgruntled, the feeling of lack of involvement comes from this thing of hata nikijaribu namna gani, I will never go anywhere kabla Warogoro achukuliwe kwanza. Because Warogoro ni anaonekana kwa TV, she's always doing all these shows, ni yeye anatukana baba sana. We need to redefine what leadership looks like, and also need to redefine what success looks like. To tell young people that you can serve as an assistant commissioner, uko kwenu mashinani, serve as a chief, not necessarily being on the top spheres of influence, and also understand that you learn. And as you grow, as time, you grow by time. So the current phase of our leadership, and this is my encouragement, this is my personal encouragement to young people, is jitume. If you're in the village, gather 3 or 4, make yourself chairperson. Learn how leadership works by practicing it. Because chances are you won't get that avenue of being mentored in this country. We're not yet there. So then as you progress, never forget why you started. You began on behalf of those young people to ensure that their interests are best met at a county and a national level. Even if they don't see you on a national level, just keep at it. At least you will ensure that as many young people get into spheres of influence. My personal journey, when I look around myself, I am very proud to see upcoming young women leaders who I have walked the journey with and who I tell that success is not being the only one. Success is carrying as many as you possibly can in different spaces of influence.
Let's have Kevin come in. I am still waiting for that time when Kevin Osido will tell me that I am going for this political position. I have been waiting for the longest of time. You know, you rub shoulders with them. I know you are on the aspect of governance watch and everything, but there are times when, you know, you say, well, I'll not just be a spectator. I have to get right inside and change the things that I think need to be changed.
Linda, that time is coming, and that time is God's appointed time.
Okay.
That time is not going to come because my co-panelists have said Kevin Osido run for president.
Yeah.
It begins with that inner drive,
right?
The oomph. What Waruguru says, kujituma. What do you feel? What is your deepest gut as that young person? Remember, all these people we are talking about, there is something that made them who they are today. And that is more than 40 years ago.
Yeah.
James Orengo with Sabasaba, he was a University of Nairobi student leader. But the desire to see multi-party democracy, you know, the kind of governance that we had at that point in time. Raila Odinga, there is something that made him, that he keeps referring to, you know, when he talks about this, our past, our history, you know. That context then, I don't know what drove the chief hustler. I probably need to get some books where his story has been written. Then I can get to know what drove him. At least now he's talking about socioeconomic rights. But each of these people have something that made them, you know, get to the points where we can make them as references. What I am doing right now, Linda, as I am 38 years old. So by Constitution of Kenya, Article 260J, I am not youth. Whether they want to say youth leader or youth or youthful, I don't think I fit in there. But one thing that I know is that on a daily basis, I am engaging with more than 3,000 youth across this country, including Waruguru here, who is not just saying that she's been one of the top contenders as a Miss President, which is a program that was being run by some of the embassies that we have in this country. And I was her trainer. Yeah. So that when she says, I struggle to speak on live TV, I relate to that because I have seen her go through that and the kind of sacrifice that she has been, you know, able to go through. Part of these 3,000 young people are people who want to run in these 2022 elections through what we call the Aspirants Academy. Is a small platform that we have, well, not small, but is a huge platform that we have put together to help train, nurture, and also link them up with opportunities where they can actually get resources to run. Because the youth of this country are very promising. When it gets to the ballot, even motivating people to register as voters is expensive. I have a friend of mine who is asking me for 7 shillings and 50 cents to mobilize youth from Migori County, Benson Mijungu, who wants to run as senator. And he says, if I can get 7 shillings and 50 cents on a daily basis, I can actually find my own way to walk around and motivate people to vote. But why should we attach that voter registration and that voting process to a coin? It is because we are seeing what the bigwigs are doing. And they are putting their huge investments of resources into translating this into money. So they are actually auctioning us and saying, if I can get 100 million or this 100 billion from Mount Kenya Foundation, and I can tell these young people, I'll give them 100 million in gunias and just throw like that, they can probably register as voters because they think that that actually resonates with what the youth is thinking. Which is why, for me, the message I keep telling these over 3,000 young people every day is, your life doesn't start and end with these particular individuals. You can create that change from your locality. And that change doesn't have to make you become president or make you become governor or anything. Begin by influencing policy decisions at your ward.
Right.
How is the CIDP reflecting on your aspirations as a youth leader? How is the annual development plan that affects the monies that go into the county budget reflect on what your aspirations as the youth within that locality are? When the county government advertises on the daily newspaper and calls for public participation, how do you engage with your networks, either through your Facebook or your Instagram or your Twitter page to, you know, rally these people around that particular agenda? Because remember, Linda, that the people we are talking about, the Railas of this world, the Rutos and the others, all those honorable members, have the youth blogging for them every day. Why are we doing it for them and we cannot do it for ourselves? And then we are given 5,000 or 15,000 and we are told, thank you so much for making me trend. But whatever subject matter you are making trend is not what is the youth agenda.
Okay.
So the youth have to begin to see the politics beyond what it is as it were, and begin to create our own agenda, because nobody is going to mentor you. We have more than 359 young people who applied to the Aspirants Academy. One of the things that we asked them to do was to share their profiles and also their mentors. Only 23 of them have mentors, and they can say so and so has mentored me. And just by virtue of that, we have actually enrolled them, because we cannot take all the 359. Just by saying you have a mentor, we have brought them onto the program. And so we want to try and find out, how do you relate with this mentor of yours?
Okay.
Is it just on a phone call and saying good morning, or WhatsApping and saying I woke up very well?
Or just watching them,
or just watching them grow? How many trainings have they sponsored you to go to? How many articles have they helped you proofread and edit and have them posted on magazines? How have they actually worked with you to be able to mentor you? Because the bottom line, Linda, is Raila Odinga can decide to mentor somebody. I don't know why he has never mentored Silas Jakakimba, who is always running around him and trying to make something out of it.
Maybe Silas is not telling us.
Maybe we need to get him, because bottom line is, that is the example of what we can be able to put to the table and say, if Mheshimiwa Raila has not mentored Silas Jakakimba, then what is that?
All right.
So that then we move this conversation from talking about them to talking about us, because at the end of the day, there is only going to be one governor, there is going to be one president and one deputy president. All the youth in this country cannot all be presidents.
Okay.
Let's begin to make influence around where we are. When I choose to run, I will make a lady my running mate.
Oh, amazing. Now, we're coming to a close, ladies and gentlemen. We are coming to a close, and so I'll give you about 1 minute to give us the parting shot, the call to action and all that. Tabitha, as you give us the same, and now that Kevin Osido speaks of a lady, the terrain is even tougher for women, let alone youth. So you are a youth and you are a woman, and I've been seeing you around, trying to create space for yourself. How hard has it been, and what are some of the things that are being incorporated to make sure that the space is equally friendly for women to take up?
All right, Linda. Thank you for this opportunity once again. I would like to, first, before I answer the question you've asked me, comment on something that
Make it brief.
Said earlier. Yes.
Right.
I don't think by any chance that that Raila or any other leader in this country has been a barrier to having the youth in the table. Let us just be aggressive enough. As a young person who has been trying to create spaces for me and even for other young people in or even in championing for some of the key issues in terms of youth and women economic employment or even empowerment, even in Fair County, it goes without saying that we must also have that environment for us that will enable us to really, get to have these discussions. Like what I think Kay said, that we have not for a long time, we have lacked the politicians who are here to nurture us or even to mentor us. So it is upon us or incumbent on us that we go out there literally and become the youth leaders by ourselves, by negotiating for some of these things in our community. So it therefore goes without saying that we should not, be afraid, or we should not, say that our lack of participation in leadership is as a result of some who has been in political opposition for a long time, and therefore we cannot go out there for it. And for Kevin, what you said about electing, a female deputy when he wants to run for the presidency, I absolutely agree with you that we cannot function in this society when women are made to be, fence sitters, as people who are just spectators. We are here and equal to the task, and we are very, very appreciative of the fact that you are recognizing that, and even the society is keeping with the speed of women and the role they play in nurturing the political and even the leadership discourse of this country and even internationally. So thank you very much for this opportunity today.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. And yes, as we come to a close, call to action, you know, parting shots, because it's really, really important that then after every conversation we get to know how best are we forging forward.
Rallying call, I think, to my fellow young people is to, like what my fellow panelists have been saying, we need to go out there, we need to step up, we need to, if a door is not created, actually just that opportunity is not created for you, just break through and get yourself in onto that seat, and the rest will be history. So we need to step up, we need to go register ourselves, we need to join political parties, because it's within those political parties then that we're able to determine whether it's Jimmy Wanjigi who is running in ODM or it's Raila Odinga who is running, and etc. And so we need to take part in political parties, politics, and also register as voters and show up during the election date.
I really would have wished for us to speak about the nominations, especially at the levels of the party, but we sadly do not have much time. You know, Josephat at some point had to shelf his interest for the sake of the party, for the sake of another party, for the sake of another person to proceed. You know, that is Kawanjiko. I don't know whether you still have conversations with the likes of Kawanjiko in terms of making Kiambaa better.
Well, Kiambu is my county. I have a political interest and ambitions. I'll be pronouncing myself when the time comes.
Yes.
And yes, for now, our MP is Kawanjiko. And just like any other sitting MP, we'll have to subject him to the process when the time comes.
Right.
So we had to make those decisions because that was the right thing to do at the time. But now, yes, as a person, I'll be pronouncing myself and my political interest when the time comes.
Right.
Well, in closing, as you say, I would like to say, there are two things. Everybody needs to come out, register and prepare to vote, regardless of your political affiliation. Kwa sababu, just like young people, lazima tuungane, tushinde. The last thing is that when we are mobilizing people to come out and vote, let us appreciate that the conversation has changed. The agenda is not tribalism or where we come from. Our agenda is one, socio-economic development. The moment we have a dynamic economy in this country, that's the only time our cost of living will be able to change, from the fueling to the petrol to the lighting and everything else, even the education. So it is important that we participate actively in the political process so that we can change our economic agenda of this nation.
Doreen, I will not give you time to counter what she said because I know you would want. At least I have been with you on set a couple of times and I can almost read your mind. But yes, you're passing shots. If they revolve around that, well and good.
All I'll say is that I'll avoid going there. Just avoid it in totality.
Yeah.
All I'll say is that to the youth out there, it's more or less a clarion call for you to realize that one, for you to have actually have a say, you need to be a voter, and then secondly, as Wakili said, you need to join political parties. When you join a political party, that's how you get to understand what you need to vie for a seat, the nomination process, and et al. Through there, you can break your own, you can break the door, like they do in the movies when the police come and you don't want to open. Now, all I'll say is going forward is that without unity, and I'll repeat this for the longest time ever, without unity and a common agenda, we will sit here, nature will take care of us, some will come and sit here, we'll discuss the entire thing every other day. There's something he said that I like about an academy. If political parties would do the same thing, believe you me, things will change. I'll give you an example. We look at someone like Malema. There's a process that catapulted to where he is right now.
Yes.
All right. If you look at South Africa, for example, look at their political parties. There is a process where young people, when they join, you know, in our parties, I know certain friends from some. I don't want to mention names. They have been in charge of youth affairs since they walked in. Now they are 45. They are still in charge of youth affairs. There is no growth in that you are put in a corner. You work there. And they don't want to mentor
and
you.
you got that.
And that is the problem. So they need to, since Kenya is in a habit of borrowing, they need to go and borrow from our brothers in Africa. Just go down there and look at what they are doing and borrow. Because until now, I am yet to see a political party with a proper institution or academy that wants to bring in new leaders, courtesy of the youth. Because I believe the youth are meant to bring something we are going to call alternative leadership, away from leadership that when you're on a podium, you have to insult someone or his tribe.
Right.
Let us argue from an ideological point. That is the only way going forward.
We have to close in 30 seconds, Kevin Osido. I must admit this. I don't know whether I'm allowed to, but it appears like the youths of CI are doing a great job in terms of, presenting themselves somewhere there at the space. I have worked with a couple of them, and I think it's impressive.
We are trying, and this is just but the ones you are seeing. On the ground, ni wengi sana huku chini, who are just thinking, and it's called a think tank for the county and for national development. But beyond that is to encourage the youth of this country that we have the best opportunity to make things better and not bitter for us. We cannot continue to give stories of Kenya from a very negative perspective in terms of the experiences and the challenges that we are going through. We have proved that we have very innovative ideas. We can think. We have produced M-Pesa. We have done lots of innovations even in the midst of COVID-19. Let us translate that into our politics. Remember, especially those who are from Mount Kenya, I agonize and empathize with you because you have a gap, a hiatus that the president himself has actually created. Work with His Excellency the President and fill that gap by encouraging the young people out there to go and register and vote. Because part of the reasons why you have very minimal numbers is because there is nothing that drives you. You probably have no presidential candidate. You don't know who your region is going to vote for. The figures that you're projecting are not encouraging. Yeah. Go out there and find a reason for you to go and register. So for the young people outside there, IEBC is projecting 5.4 million. I believe we can do better for beyond that. So remember that failure to register to vote is failing to vote, and that means you're putting the wrong person into office. Is that what we want? I don't think so.
Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Waruguru Kiai, youth and gender worker. We've also had Tabitha Ogutu, who's a youth leader, Nordin Kagai, who's a lawyer, Kevin Osido, governance expert, the gentleman at the back, and we have also had right next to me Eliud Ngugi, who's an advocate, and lastly Josephat Kamanya, political analyst. I don't know whether I should drop this trivia. We'll continue with it as we continue. After we've closed, youth or youths, which is right? Youth or youths, which is right? It's a Youth Tuesday, and so we'll be discussing that. I'll also task the next guests to tell me whether it is right to say youths or youth. After this break, we come back with more.